Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our weekly attorney talk. For those who usually watch our weekly show on Fridays, you'll notice that I'm here alone. My colleague Chris of law office is a Christopher X. Maher. He's currently his wife, who you may know as Jennifer Maher, who's a broker with Jay Phillips. She is currently on a business trip, and she took him with him because they to get a little beach time before summer's over. So it's just going to be me today. Sorry to disappoint, but hopefully we can still engage and have a good conversation as to the uh, continuing our topics of what we've been discussing. So just a reminder, we're doing I think it's 12, 13, 14-week program related to immigration court and the various issues that happen with immigration court. One of the reasons why we first originally started talking about this was right around the time that Afghanistan and things of that, and there was a lot of concerns about what a refugee is and how someone's a refugee and whether or not a refugee and asylum seeker are the same thing. And we kind of discussed that over the last few weeks. But today we're going to continue on our kind of micro topic about what asylum is, because you'll remember if we spoke last week, asylum is also a very hot button topic right now because of the issues down in Mexico, where we talked about how the quote unquote stay in Mexico order under President Trump is more or less still being in place despite President Biden's new administration. So uh, every day something is changing, and every day something is new in terms of what's going on in asylum law. And so that's why we wanted to continue on with our discussion and go into a good deep dive, so people that are interested or may or may not be here and are seeking want to seek asylum, that hopefully this would be a good way to help in terms of what actually you have to prove, what you have to show, what have you. So as we discussed, a general over idea of what asylum law is that an individual who seeks asylum, they must prove certain things: that they faced past prosecution, or they have a well-founded fear of future. I'm sorry, I meant to say persecution, or well-founded fear of future persecution based upon five certain grounds, that the government can't protect them or is unwilling to protect them. So we're going to go into that other part later about the five specific grounds, as well as the specifics as to the government and what and who's kind of doing these actions and things like that. But today we're going to focus on something that is extremely difficult to prove, which is what is persecution. I mean, if you look it up, you think you know what the definition is, and a lot of times it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of what actually is occurring and what really has occurred. But really, when you get to the specifics of it's a lot more difficult than it seems, because you hear stories about things such as attempted murders or gang violence and things like that. And the question is, does that rise to the level of persecution needed to prove that you're that you're eligible for asylum? And it depends. It's really much a case by case situation. So there's no definition of persecution, and they did that purposely because really it's a lot of times it's a specific situation. So as Chris discussed about last week, our firm just was able to get asylum on behalf of an individual who was brutally attacked and had to escape from government forces that were trying to kill him. And we were able to prove that from not only his individual testimony, but also other testimonies and general news reports and things like that. And that was not an easy case to prove, because a one-time situation where someone may or may not be trying to kill you could rise to the level of persecution necessary, but it also couldn't. And so it really depends on the case by case situation. So usually the rule of thumb is, physical harm or threats to physical harm uh, are usually like a good place to start. Uh, Not just in terms of like multiple beatings or things like that, but we're also talking about rape, and we're talking about female genital mutilation and things of that nature. And so that kind of usually always is something that very well is the place to start in terms of the way to prove persecution. But what about situations that like mental anguish, which as generations have turned, mental illness is starting to become more commonly acknowledged as other types of illnesses, and individuals that are unable to receive the medical care they need for things like that, that also could rise to the level of persecution, because basically if you're not able to receive the care that you need, then it's a threat to your physical and mental harm. One other thing that you see a lot too is economic harm, and it's very difficult to prove economic harm because, for instance, we've had situations where local gangs have more or less made your business impossible, or made it impossible for someone to go about their business and do their run their business or things like that, and that could rise to the level of persecution, but it also couldn't. So really, just to kind of spell out exactly what it is there really is no clear definition of what persecution is that rises to the level of an asylum seeker. An individual who has been raped multiple times by a spouse or things of that nature have been found both eligible and ineligible for asylum based upon persecution. So it really is a case by case basis, and it really is, most importantly, requires a lot of evidence, and for someone to work with an attorney to really build up that record so you can show a pattern, you can show that this is very well going to happen, or very well has happened. And that's kind of a good segue, because the next issue is you have to show severe past persecution or well founded fear of future persecution. And you can prove the well-founded fear of future persecution based upon what's happened in the past, for instance, multiple rapes and things like that. But past persecution is almost, it has to be so extreme that it's almost impossible to deny, and that is very, very, very hard to prove. One of the examples they give is, for example, German citizens who were Jewish after World War II, that they suffered such severe persecution that that's kind of the threshold that a lot of judges kind of hold that past persecution to, that standard to. So we really want to prove well-founded fear of future persecution based upon all the that record that we're going to show that all of these things that circumstantially have occurred and will most likely will occur in the future because of the various five specific areas, which we'll be discussing in future discussions. So one of the next things that's really important to prove is persecution is who's doing it, because it's easy when it's a government or a government actor or someone acting on behalf of the government, because if it's, and by easy I mean it's easier to prove, because if you have a administration that has said that all XYZ individuals are no longer citizens, or they can't be citizens, and you're allowed to kill them and there's no big deal. If that's like an official government stance, that's kind of the classic asylum situation that a lot of people kind of have been able to prove for asylum. But one of the bigger issues is gangs and things like that. And what you also show is that it's past persecution by individuals that the government can't do anything about, either because they don't want to, or they don't care, or that they physically just can't handle it. So a lot of times in the triangle of countries down in Guatemala, Colombia, and places like that, where gang violence is absolutely terrible, it's the government can't do anything about stopping those types of violence. And so what we would prove is that well-founded fear of persecution, rapes, beatings, murder, things of that nature, by a non-government actor that the government can't control. And that's how we would really prove, or try to prove, one of those things. And so, just to kind of sum up what persecution is and how to prove it, I'm going to tell you the same answer I tell anybody that walks in here, that it is a very specific case by case basis. And you may think on paper, oh, this is easy. But I have seen cases that are the definition of persecution, and people have tried to do it themselves. They didn't want to hire an attorney, or things of that or just, they figured it's easy to prove and they were denied, because you really got to build that record and you really got to show all of the things that connect and who's doing it, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and either if it's immigration judge or if it's a asylum excuse me, if it's an immigration hearing officer, they get hundreds of these. They only have a few minutes to look through your papers beforehand. So it's really important to build that record, which is why if you want to go with any attorney that you want to make sure that they know what they're doing, building that record. You want to make sure that they understand the various facets of persecution, and mostly understand that there's no actual definition of just say, okay, you just have to prove this, and boom, you can show persecution. And so, we are always happy to speak to anybody regarding any individual case. You can see below. You can feel free to give us a call. My email is and phone number is down below. We speak Spanish, we can speak French, and we can help you just figure out your specific situation. And so, feel free to give us a call, 848-228-5100. We're here, we're around to speak, and hopefully next week, Chris will be back and we'll kind of continue on with this discussion. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.